I'm a 30-year-old man and I've worked dead-end jobs my whole life. I grew up in a pretty rough neighbourhood to a single mother because half the time my deadbeat dad decided he wants to play around and get into trouble doing who knows what. My mother was an angel and did what she could to keep me fed. As money was an issue, I'd often did what I could to make a few bucks. Whether that was through less desirable means, though I'd rather not say. Growing up through high school was a pain. I had no friends and nobody wanted to talk to me. Even with the teachers, I could feel as though they'd rather not deal with me. I was a pretty big kid, not too fat, but bulky and tall. At the age of 18, when everyone was getting ready to go off to university, I didn't have the financial means to do so. I was in no position to take out a loan, and to be honest, I didn't want to. I went straight into work, working all these crap jobs just to barely get by. One day at the fresh age of 30, I was walking home from a warehouse job. It was midnight. My usual route back home to my apartment was only a 10-minute walk away, and it involved walking through the woods. I loved the peace and the solitude. It was a space and time where I could finally breathe, and I looked forward to it every time. Anyway, one night I made my usual route back home, and somewhere along the way in the darkness of the woods, I noticed something that sparked my curiosity. There was a large gaping hole in the ground between these two leafless trees. I noticed this hole because, as it happens, just opposite was a barely working street light that flickered on and off. This hole looked as if it was man-made and not by some animal. Curiosity got the better of me and I threw a stone down the hole. I was expecting a thump or perhaps a noise to signal that it had reached the bottom. I heard nothing but the piercing silence all around me. I looked around and saw nothing but empty woods and this large gaping hole. Any normal person would have walked away by now without a care in the world. However, I decided to feed my curiosity and got down on my knees, touching the cold fallen leaves. There, I got another stone and threw it down the hole again and listened intently. Nothing. I turned the torch on from the settings on my phone and shined it down, seeing absolutely nothing but the empty void. I grabbed the edges of the hole with both hands, as if the gaping hole was luring me in, and it was working. It was silly of me to do so, but I wasn't afraid, just curious. I reached down the hole with my arm, and with swiftness I was yanked in like the strength of the Earth's gravity had multiplied. Suddenly, just as quickly as I was brought in, I found myself under the flickering streetlight. I looked around and everything seemed fine, but the hole was no longer there. Was I hallucinating this whole thing? I questioned myself. Unsettled by this experience, I made my way back home. As expected, nobody was around. I couldn't hear any cars, not even crickets or birds, just a mild wind hitting my face. It seemed like a long time had passed, but it was still only around 1:15 midnight before I got home. I set my shoes at the door and placed my backpack on the coat hanger and slumped straight into bed. And almost immediately I fell asleep. After a long dreamless sleep, I woke up at around 8 a.m. and I went straight into the shower. It was warm and calming, but as I stood cleaning my face, I began to remember what had happened last night. It was all clear and vivid up until I put my arm into the hole, but after that it was like everything had gone blank and all of a sudden I was standing under the flickering light. Perhaps I was hallucinating, I thought. I made my usual morning breakfast, eggs and beans, and I washed it all down with a tall glass of water. At this point it was getting close to 9 a.m. and I was supposed to start work at midday. I had plenty of time to kill, so I spent it watching a crime documentary, all the way until I had to leave to go to work. I left my apartment building at around 11:30 a.m, and this is when I first noticed it. Silence. Complete and utter silence. I saw and heard no one. No sound of cars, no sound of rushing footsteps, and the birds. There was nothing. You'd expect to hear at least some type of animal in the absence of people. But yeah, all I could hear was the sound of my own footsteps and the slow breath that I took every few seconds. I was baffled, but I tried not to think about it. I made my way through the woods to my place of work, and usually there are cyclists and dog walkers that come through here, especially around this time of the day. But yet again, there was nothing, not even an animal. I went to the area where the gaping hole was, and to my lack of surprise, it wasn't there. What was going on? When I arrived at my workplace, I opened a side door to the large building and made my way inside. Whenever I entered before, John, the one person I got along with in this wretched place, would always greet me and ask how I've been. Again, as I entered this building, I was met with silence. Though all the lights were on, it was as if everyone had stopped what they were doing and left. I shouted hello, and it echoed like it never did before. I went to the manager's office, and despite my hatred for this one pest of a manager, I wanted to see at least some human being. But after entering, it only worsened my realization of it all. Well, it's been a few months since this all happened, after plunging into that dark hole in the woods, and I think I'm going insane. I see things that aren't there, and everything is piercingly silent. Just the other day I was heading towards a store to pick up some supplies. I'd crossed the street, but I stopped because I noticed something dark in the distance, and it was rapidly getting larger from every blink of an eye. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed that it was a slender dark figure running with immense speed towards me, but it made no sound of footsteps, which was odd. All I heard was my breath and my speeding heartbeat. It was grinning with malicious intent. It seemed as though it was only 15 feet away when I turned my back and bolted. I ran towards my apartment building, which fortunately wasn't too far away. As I got to my apartment building door, I glanced back and it was still running toward me, grinning. But it was closer this time. My heart skipped a beat and I quickly opened the door and slammed it shut. Nothing happened. The door to the building is grey and it's quite sturdy, and it also has a peephole. I could only see so much through this small hole, but from what I was able to see, I could see nothing but the empty grey street. After this, I decided not to go to the store for supplies. It wasn't urgent, to be honest. But since that experience, whether it was real or not, I have been increasingly cautious on my surroundings because I'm fearful that that darker figure will appear. Oftentimes I sit staring out my balcony on the top floor at night and listen to the silence of the world. It was kind of blissful. I could see the city lights all on, but it was completely silent. Just the wind I could hear. I've been trying to figure out how this all happened, and it all began with that hole in the woods, but the thing is, it is not there anymore, so I don't know what to do, to be honest. Lately I've accepted that this is my new life. This concludes my journal entry for today. It was a lot to write down, but at least I feel a little easier.